Tens of thousands of clay tablets have been discovered in the ruins of the ancient Near East. Many deal with record aspects of daily life, such as trade or workers' wages and nuptial contracts. The ones found mostly in palace libraries, others discovered in the ruins of temple libraries or of scribal schools, a group of canonized texts, a secret literature, written down in the Sumerian language and then translated to Akkadian that was the first Semitic language, and other ancient languages. According to Zecharia Sitchin, even those early writings going back almost 6,000 references are made to lost books which were texts inscribed on stone tablets. Among the incredible finds in the ruins of ancient cities and their libraries are the clay prisms inscribed with the very information about the 10 pre-diluvial rulers and their 432,000 years. Known as the Sumerian king lists, their several versions leave no doubt that their Sumerian compilers had access to some earlier common or canonized textual material. Coupled with other equally early texts, they strongly suggest that the original recorder of the arrival, as well as of preceding events and certainly of following events, had to be one of those leaders, a key participant, an eyewitness. According to Sitchin, one who had been an eyewitness to all those events, indeed a key participant in them, was the leader who had splashed down with the first group of astronauts. At that time his epithet name was Ea, he whose home is water. He experienced the disappointment of having command of Earth mission given to his half-brother and rival Enlil, Lord of the Command, a humiliation little mitigated by granting him the title Enki, Lord of Earth. Relegated away from the cities of the gods and their spaceport in the Eden, so-called Eden's Garden, to supervise the mining of gold in the Abzu, southeastern Africa, it was Enki, a great scientist, who came across the hominids who inhabited those parts. And so when the Anunnaki toiling in the gold mines mutinied, it was he who realized that the needed manpower could be obtained through the evolution of genetic engineering, and thus did the Adam, literally he of the earth or earthling, come into being. As a hybrid, the Adam could not procreate. The events echoed in the biblical tale of Adam and Eve in the Garden of Eden record the second genetic manipulation by Enki that added the extra chromosomal genes needed for sexual procreation. And when mankind, proliferating, did not turn out the way it had been envisaged, it was Enki, who defied his brother Enlil's plan to let mankind perish in the deluge, the events whose hero has been called Noah in the Bible and Ziusidra in the earlier original Sumerian text. In at least 2 instances, such initiates wrote down as they were instructed to do those divine teachings as mankind's heritage. One, called Adapa and probably a son of Enki by a human female, is known to have written a book titled Writings Regarding Time, one of the earliest lost books. The other, called Enki, was in all probability the prototype of the biblical Enoch, the one who was taken up to heaven after he had entrusted to his sons the Book of Divine Secrets, and of which a version has possibly survived in the extra-biblical Book of Enoch. Though the firstborn of Anu, he was not destined to be his father's successor on the throne of Nibiru. Complex rules of succession, which reflected the convoluted history of the Nibiruans, gave that privilege to Enki's half-brother Enlil. Enki and Enlil ended up on a mission to an alien planet Earth whose gold was needed to create a shield for preserving Nibiru's dwindling atmosphere. The conflict carried on between the two half-brothers' sons, even among their grandchildren, the fact that all of them, and especially those born on Earth, faced the loss of longevity that Nibiru's extended orbital period provided. Furthermore added personal agonies and sharpened ambitions. It all came to a climax in the last century of the 3rd millennium BC when Marduk, Enki's firstborn by his official spouse, claimed that he and not Enlil's firstborn son, Ninurta, should inherit the earth. The bitter conflict that included a series of wars led in the end to the use of nuclear weapons. The ensuing though unintended result was the demise of the Sumerian civilization. The initiation of chosen individuals into the secrets of the gods had marked the beginning of priesthood, the lineages of mediators between the gods and the people, the transmitters of the divine words to the mortal earthlings. And as mankind was increasingly drawn to take sides in the godly conflicts, prophecy began to play a role. The proclamations of Enlil, sometimes even of Anu, that used to be unquestioned were now subjected to the scrutiny of the difference between destiny, like the planetary orbits, whose course had been determined and was unchangeable, and a destiny that could be bent, broken, changed, which was fate. Reviewing and recalling the sequence of events, and the apparent parallelism between what had happened on Nibiru and what took place on Earth, Enki, and Enlil began to ponder philosophically what indeed was destined and could not have been avoided, was just fated as a consequence of right or wrong decisions and free choice. The latter could not be predicted, the former could be foreseen, especially if all, as the planetary orbits, was cyclical, if what was shall again be, if the first things shall also be the last things. The climactic event of the nuclear desolation sharpened soul, searching among the leaders of the Anunnaki, and raised the need to explain to the devastated human masses why it came to pass this way. Was it destiny, or was it just the result of an Anunnaki-made fate? Was anyone responsible? Is there someone accountable? The latter could not be predicted, the former could be foreseen, especially if all, as the planetary orbits, was cyclical, if what was shall again be, if the first things shall also be the last things. In the councils of the Anunnaki on the eve of the calamity, it was Enki who stood alone in opposition to the use of the forbidden weapon. It was thus important for Enki to explain to the suffering remnants that turning point in the saga of extraterrestrials who had meant well but ended as destroyers had come to pass. And who but Ea/Enki, who was the first to come and an eyewitness to it all, was most qualified to tell the past, so that the future could be divined? And the best way to tell it all was as a first-person report by Enki himself. That he had recorded his autobiography is certain, for a long text, stretching over at least 12 tablets, discovered in the library Nippur quotes Enki as saying, "When I approached earth, there was much flooding. When I neared its green meadows, heaps and mounds were piled up at my command. In a pure place I built my house, an appropriate name I gave it." And the best way to tell it all was as a first-person report by Enki himself. That he had recorded his autobiography is certain, for a long text stretching over at least 12 tablets discovered in the library Nippur quotes Enki as saying, "When I approached earth, there was much flooding. When I neared its green meadows, heaps and mounds were piled up at my command. In a pure place I built my house, an appropriate name I gave it." The long text continues to describe how Ea/Enki then assigned tasks to his lieutenants, putting their mission to Earth in motion. Numerous other texts that relate varied aspects of Enki's role in the ensuing development serve to complete Enki's tale. They include a cosmogony, an epic of creation, at whose core lay Enki's own text, which scholars call the Eridu Genesis. They include detailed descriptions of the fashioning of the atom. They describe how other Anunnaki, male and female, came to Enki in his city Eridu to obtain from him the MEA kind of data disk that encoded all aspects of civilization, and they include texts of Enki's private life and personal problems. The Atra-Hazes text throws light on Anu's efforts to prevent a flare-up of the Enki-Enlil rivalries by dividing Earth's domains between them, and texts recording the events preceding the deluge render almost verbatim the debates in the Council of the Gods. About the fate of mankind and Enki's subterfuge known as the Tale of Noah and the Arche tale known only from the Bible until one of its original Mesopotamian versions was found in the tablets of the Epic of Gilgamesh. Sumerian and Akkadian clay tablets, Babylonian and Assyrian temple libraries, Egyptian, Hittite, and Canaanite myths, and the biblical narratives are the main body of written-down memories of the affairs of gods and men. For the first time ever, this dispersed and fragmented material has been assembled and used by Zecharia Sitchin to recreate the eyewitness account of Enki, the autobiographical memoirs and insightful prophecies of an extraterrestrial god. Sitchin presented it as a text dictated by Enki to a chosen scribe, a book of witnessing to be unsealed at an appropriate time. In dealing with the past, did Enki himself perceive the future? Would it be correct to think that the notion that the Anunnaki, exercising free will, were masters of their own destinies, as well as the destiny of humanity? Would it be correct to understand that it was fate that, when all was said and done, determined the course of events? And therefore, as the Hebrew prophets recognized, will the first things be the last things? Thus, the record of events dictated by Enki thus becomes a foundation for the prophecy, and the past becomes the future. To continue having access to these knowledge, come to the Anunnaki world. Subscribe, like, comment and share to be part of it.